Hey, everybody. Welcome to TIAA Bank Field in Jacksonville. I am Ryan Wood of PackersNews.com alongside my esteemed colleague, columnist Pete Dougherty. That's the Florida League out there. Saints Field here in Jacksonville where the Jaguars play. A confusing day, Pete, but the most confusing part, what on earth was that? 38-3. I didn't see that coming.
What a debacle. It was stunning. It was. You watch this team in camp, and the offense looked really good most days. Aaron Rodgers looked really sharp. He had a terrible day. The defense couldn't get off the field. The debut for Joe Barry was a disaster. I've been covering this league long enough. They're right when they say it is just one game. Their season's not shot. Tampa Bay won the Super Bowl last year, losing by the same score to these guys. And that was like in week 9. I remember my second season covering the league, 94. San Francisco went out to Philadelphia. I remembered it was early in the year. Week 5 got beat 40-8. San Francisco won the Super Bowl that year. So this doesn't shoot the season out the window, but it does raise red flags. And it was just a stunningly poor performance by a team that came into this season thinking that they have a really good shot at winning a Super Bowl.
You know what thought I had, Pete, while we watched this offense today? You're right. This offense, this quarterback looked really good, really sharp all camp against that Packers defense. Coincidence? Because that Packers defense looked really bad. Matt LaFleur said it after the end. Offensively, it reminded him a lot of his very first game as head coach, the opener of 2019, 10-3 in Chicago, a victory because the defense was stellar that day. The offense was awful in that first game. They were bad most of 2019, not great.
Yeah.
But the defense was there. The defense, they were bad on both sides of the ball. They were bad everywhere. Even Corey Bojorquez, who had a good day, even he had like a 38-yard one. Like everywhere was bad today. Correlation, good offense all camp against that Packers defense.
Hard to know. I mean, you just can't know from watching them playing themselves. For one thing, they never tackle, so you still you in practice, so you don't get to know that about a team and how good of tacklers they are. I mean, generally you cut a little slack for a new coordinator putting in a new system, but I mean, not that much slack. I mean, that was really bad against the team. They had everything going against them. Dislodged from home for how long? Displaced from home for they've been gone 2 or 3 weeks already.
This was a road game too.
It was what 70% Packers fans probably. They got this new quarterback playing this guy who throws. He's an interception machine. They didn't pick him off once. It was a disastrous performance, and I mean I don't mean to suggest all is well because obviously all is not well, and promising seasons can go down the tubes, just like one that starts terrible can turn around and go and become good. So there's a lot of red flags there. I thought the most interesting thing Matt LaFleur said was, this is not going to fix itself magically. And he's right there. And this defensive coordinator has got to figure out quickly what his guys can and can't do. First thing I think of is get Eric Stokes out there in the nickel.
I thought the most interesting thing that LaFleur said, first of all, he called it humbling, embarrassing, and shocking. But the most interesting thing to me, he was very candid about, like, when something like this happens, you rethink everything.
Yeah.
Look, it's an open debate in the league. The Packers sat 30 guys in each of their 3 preseason games, the top of their roster, and they looked like they hadn't played before because they hadn't against the Saints team that did play in starters. They didn't play. It's an open debate in the league. Do you play guys? Do you rest guys in the preseason? The team that looked like it was ready for the regular season today was the team that actually played in the preseason. Aaron Rodgers after the game, he put no stock into that. Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to play in the preseason. But Matt LaFleur said you rethink he's even rethinking that because they were a couple steps behind the speed of the game on both sides.
I'll be really curious to see what they do next year. I'm still of the mind, and I'm sure people watching will think I'm nuts, but I'm still of the mind if sitting guys but coming out of camp really healthy, if it costs you a game in the opener, but you're healthier in December than you otherwise would have been, that it's worth it. Now, you never know for sure what injuries you would have had in preseason. If they play those guys, maybe nobody gets hurt. But maybe you have an injury like J.K. Dobbins with the Ravens. That's a killer injury, their best running back out. So I get why they don't play them. A lot of teams don't play their guys. I would err that way too. But LaFleur did say, well, they'll rethink everything. Now, just because they rethink it doesn't mean they'll change it. We won't know until next year at this time whether this actually made a difference to them.
I was a little surprised that he was open to that idea because I said it on the podcast with Tom Silverstein, and we'll be doing that. Make sure you check for that at Packers News tomorrow. But I said I think that if they had their choice, they would sacrifice Christmas in this opening game, even if it leads to a loss, for a healthy preseason. And so I think that long term, look, it's hard to think that it didn't have any influence today. I mean, you saw it. But I think long term, that is still something that they would take that sacrifice. It's one game for health over the course of the season.
That's my thinking too. But, I mean, who knows? Maybe this game will be huge for tiebreakers or for seeding in the, once the playoffs hit. There's a lot of questions here about Aaron Rodgers. A lot of suggestions that he didn't seem engaged. Suggestions that tanking would be overstating it, but I think a couple of the questioners were wondering if, basically they need to trade the guy right now was one of them. What are any thoughts on that whole thing?
I thought it was kind of stunning. This is what I wrote about, and you'll see it on Packers News soon. This is a quarterback that sees everything on the field. This is a quarterback that has a plan for everything on the field. And we saw Aaron Rodgers genuinely confused today. We saw him not see things like Marcus Williams deep down the middle of the field. That second interception to me, Aaron Rodgers said the first interception was the game changer, and he's right. But that second interception is more emblematic of how this game went from a quarterback standpoint. Because how often do we see Aaron Rodgers just chuck it, hope and pray? And that's what that throw was. He just chucked it up there. He thought that Marcus Williams was going to be on the other side because Devontae Adams ran a high corner, and he was completely wrong. He didn't see the safety. And I don't know. I can't remember ever hearing Aaron Rodgers say, I didn't see the safety. That's a shocking thing for him to say.
He basically said he didn't look. I see Gaston Roos is calling BS on at least me. I'm not sure if you would agree with what I said. And to wake up. And look, I get your point, but the hardest thing, just something to remember for everybody out there, the hardest thing to do when you're observing this league is to not be a prisoner of what just happened. There are so many ups and downs. Look at the Milwaukee Bucks. Look how awful they were for the first half of the season. They really struggled. And yet, look, they won the championship. So this is how pro sports can work. I'm not saying all's well with the Packers. They're going to win the Super Bowl. I'm not suggesting anything like that. I'm just saying you got to keep this in context and see what happens over the next month, the next 6 weeks. If they turn around and if they're 5-1 in 6 weeks, this game is in the rearview mirror and means nothing. If they're 2-4 in 6 weeks, then there are real problems. But none of us knows the answer to that right now. So you just don't be a prisoner of what just happened.
Eric Zank is saying this was an A.J. Dillon and not an Aaron Jones game. When A.J. Dillon was on the field, he did have some pop.
He did.
Here's the thing, though. It was a running game.
That's a really good point.
It was a running game, period. Regardless of who was carrying the rock, run the football. Because the Saints, really, there was a reason why the offense looked disjointed on offense. It's because they were completely bamboozled by what the Saints did defensively. A year ago, week 3, the Saints came out, and they did a lot of one high. They did a lot of pressure-heavy defense. No Devontae Adams on the field. They didn't have to protect against the game. Big play. They were too high all day today. You run against too high. And Matt LaFleur said after the game, he pointed it right at himself, said, I did not get enough running plays for this offense. And look, they were down early, but that's true. There was nowhere near enough balance or a run attack. What did you make of that?
Yeah, and true. I think that's right. When Dillon, he got yards, and it was a tough day for Aaron Jones. It was a game where they needed the physical runner. Someone there had a comment about that the Packers they didn't use the word flat, but basically that's what they just didn't have the energy or fire. And it's sure, it looked like they didn't. And it's funny because I asked Rodgers, did this team get full of itself? And he said, yeah.
That's a great.
He said they probably did.
That's a great question.
And it doesn't take a genius to have seen that. I'm sure that had the feel of a team that was really full of itself. And read and heard all the good things being said and just expected to show up here and the Saints would lay down. And what a harsh lesson they got.
And it had the feel of an offense that had been going against a bad defense all camp. It was believing in itself for that. I think Holly was asking about Randall Cobb today, just not seeing him on the field. Surprised by that?
Not so much. You know what I was surprised by was where was Amari Rodgers? You know, I only remember 2, I think, fake jet sweeps.
Yeah.
2. Remember what a huge part of that, like they
opposite of last year's opener in Minnesota.
They don't hand the ball off. Yeah, exactly. They don't hand the ball off much on those, but just the action keeps the defense home on the backside. And I think they twice, Lazard ran the motion once, and then they had Kylan Hill in there with Aaron Jones together, and I think they did it once. I think they got to get him. They drafted this guy to catch bubble screens and to run jet sweeps. I would think that's a guy they want to get on the field. I wonder if that's something LaFleur has to look at because obviously the run game didn't work at all. I think those jet sweeps helped the run game more than anything.
There's a comment here. The defense has an issue no matter who the coach is.
Yeah.
I'm curious what you think, Pete, because I got to be honest. When they made the coordinator change from Mike Pettin, I thought Mike Pettin was a fairly solid defensive coordinator. I thought he was a good defensive coordinator.
Yeah, he was.
Don't hate me. I'm just being real with you.
He was reviled by many Packers fans, but he was not a huge problem. He's a professional defensive coordinator.
They were 9th in the NFL last year in defense. The first time they've been top 10 in total defense since 2010, and you remember that year. So when they made that change, Pete, I'm thinking, boy, that's risky. They bring in a defensive coordinator who has been a defensive coordinator 4 previous years, 2 in Washington, 2 in Detroit, and always has had a bottom 5 defense, and that looked a lot like a bottom 5 defense today. That wasn't Drew Brees.
That was the definition of it.
That wasn't Drew Brees. That was Jameis Winston. That was going for 121 passer rating, 4 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Jameis Winston, not a future Hall of Famer. I know it's early, Pete, but that's not a promising start.
No, I mean, basically, I'm not gonna fully judge this till we get halfway through the year. You know, so if this is happening, anything even close to this is happening every other week for the next 2 months, then the change at coordinator was bad. Because I still think there's talent on that side of the ball.
A lot of talent.
Jair Alexander is an outstanding cornerback. Savage and Amos are solid safeties. Zadarius Smith didn't play a lot, but he's a good pass rusher. Gary's a promising player.
Zadarius Smith made maybe the one actual defensive play. Now he got a bogus penalty for it. I mean, what a garbage roughing. And if you follow, I don't blame officiating for anything. That was a terrible call.
I didn't see the replay in the end zone part of it. I thought I heard some other reporters saying that Savage actually might not have caught that ball.
Maybe.
So that I don't know if any of you viewers out there saw that. If you could send a message in. But I thought I heard a couple of reporters saying, "Well, I don't know if he caught that."
It was for a guy who has had 4 practices, 1 in pads, who did nothing all camp basically, to come in and play it even at all. But as much as he did, which was probably close to 20 snaps, 15, 20 snaps, which you were right on in pregame. I asked Pete over under how many snaps Zadarius Smith plays. He said 20. I would have taken the under. I don't know. It'll be close. But for him to do that and then have the play of the game, which admittedly that's a low bar. There were not really any plays in this game. There's a lot of talent. There's a lot of talent there. He's better than that.
Kenny Clark's a very good player. He actually had a couple decent plays. You know, he was like the one guy who probably played okay. So there's ability there. I think this was just a coaching failure and just not knowing. You would hope that they would have figured out their players more than they have. They have so far.
There's Cody, and he's not the only one. It says that he liked what Jordan Love did, even though it was garbage time. Garbage time for me was deadline time. I had to write. Pete, you got to see Jordan Love. I got to go back and watch the film. What did you think of Jordan Love at the end there?
You know, I was already starting to write myself, but I did. He looked okay. He threw he hit a couple passes. He had a strip sack too. So sorry, I need some water here.
So I gave you my Mountain Dew, but I don't know. We're social distancing still.
He looked okay, but you know they were playing way off coverage. The game was over. you can't judge anything by what you saw there.
Can we scrap the Kevin King project? Mike asks. He's tough to watch. It was a tough day for him again.
There was that one third down. I think it was a third down where he played off coverage. He was off by 10 yards. They just threw a quick. They threw not even a quick out. Picked up about 10 yards on an easy out.
I don't get that too.
He does that every once in a while. I don't know why he plays. I think they have a little leeway on how much cushion they can give there, and he seems to err on the side of extra cushion.
I don't get that because at this point, it's very apparent Matt LaFleur wants Kevin King pressing at the line of scrimmage. He has made that abundantly clear. So how has that not happened? It's no mystery. Matt LaFleur, he's the head coach. He wants you to press at the line of scrimmage, and you're 8 yards off in coverage. It doesn't compute with me.
Yeah, I'm reading Eric Zenk here. He's saying in response to being a prisoner that there's a lot of red. He saw a lot of red flags, and there were
38-3. That's
they're definitely
a hell of a red flag.
There definitely were. I wonder where they'll be sitting. What are we going to be talking about a month from now when we're doing this? And are things on the upswing, or do these issues keep showing up? Because over 17 games, the red flags that are really red flags, they'll keep showing up as the season goes on. And there's a lot of good players on this team. I just find it hard to believe that this isn't still going to be a playoff team, but maybe it won't. Maybe their whole season will fall apart. Maybe it's just the start of things falling apart. None of us knows.
Do you know another thing I found interesting? Dave Schrader, WBAY, asked Aaron Rodgers after the game about the Florida thing. Aaron Rodgers now 3-5 in his career in Florida. He had a 35, 36 passer rating, his worst passer rating today since last season at the Bucs in Florida.
Fourth worst of his career.
Yeah, and almost identical last season in Florida. And he said that he doesn't believe in coincidences in life, so he probably can't slough it off to a coincidence. This game was in Florida, Pete. How is there anything to that? If they get back up to Lambeau Field next week against the Lions, or in 2 weeks they get out to San Francisco, does it look different because it's not Jackson? It's not Florida.
I don't see how Florida can have anything to do with it.
It's hot here.
Against the Bucs, that was an outstanding defense. I understand that game last year. This one doesn't make any sense. I think the Packers just completely overrated themselves, came in with, their head full of helium, thought they'd just walk out there and roll right over them, and they got punched in the face and didn't get up.
You mentioned, and Davey Gordon says put Stokes in. You mentioned getting Stokes in the nickel. Jair Alexander in the slot. If you do that,
that's how it would have to go. You can't put the rookie in there. He hasn't practiced there. It's too much learning all that defense. It's a totally different position. But turn it into a real star position. Play him like they played.
We didn't really see that today, did we?
No, played like Charles Woodson. I saw Savage played once, played a snap in the star. Alexander played slot on a couple of the dimes, but most of the dimes he was outside. I think they need to get. They got to get their most talented guys out there, and Stokes is one of them.
What's the biggest thing you're going to take away from this? I understand you're right. Small sample size, obviously. But what's the biggest thing going into week 2 now that you're going to want to see?
I think it's just they need to put up a strong performance next week just to bury this thing. And if they don't, and if they struggle, then there is something to the red flags. Now they've got a game in, they got a full week of practice. It's incumbent on them to play like a team that's actually going to be contending for a Super Bowl.
I'm curious how much they go back to the drawing board and change, because everything they thought and everything that they did today was wrong. That's not overstating things. There was nothing today that was correct or right, from the game plan to the execution to what they expected. Everything was off. And Matt LaFleur, I asked him after the game, was there anything in the past couple of weeks that could have give you an inkling that this might be possible? He said no. So they did not expect this season. When they go back to the drawing board, how much is different? How much do they change? I think that how much do they scrap, or how much do they say, no, this is a team that just was 13-3 the last 2 years, NFC Championship games. The MVP is back. And it's a ridiculously talented roster at the top. do they just plow through? I think that will be very interesting.
They've got to make some tweaks, and I think the
so.
jet sweep stuff is the place to start. And without a doubt, this defensive coordinator is guilty till proven innocent.
That's a great way. Look, when you come in as a defensive coordinator, your opening press conference, and you talk about being thankful for your scars, hell of a quote, but that means they're scars.
Yeah.
That means they're scars.
He's guilty.
That was a scar.
He's guilty until proven innocent because of his past and because of this defense's past. I mean, they were okay last year, but they needed to bump it. They need to bump it up another level to win the Super Bowl.
Let's end it on this from Lennox. Pete, Ryan, do you honestly think this is a Super Bowl team? Look, Lennox, I picked them to win the Super Bowl. I picked them to beat the Bills in the Super Bowl. I feel really not great about that decision right now. As far as life choices goes, I've made better. So I'm going to ride with that because it's week 1. They're both 0-1. I do. I the only thing that gives me pause on that, Pete, is at some point all quarterbacks have shelf life, and Aaron Rodgers looked different today.
He did not look good. I didn't pick that. I picked the 49ers to go for the NFC, and I picked the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. So I didn't pick the Packers. I just wondered if something's just going to go wrong. I wonder if their health wouldn't hold up like it has in the past. I'd still argue their chances are about as good as anybody's. But, yeah, of course this gives you pause. You just got to know that it's the first game of 17, and you just don't know where they'll be sitting 2 months from now. And so we'll learn a lot over the next 2 months. And I'm still not picking them to win the Super Bowl. But, yeah, push comes to shove, their chances are as good as anybody's in the NFC. I mean, these are seasons like dog years. So much will happen in the next 6 months, let alone 2 or 3.
How many wins did you have?
I had 13-4.
I had 13-4. Do you back off that after today?
Not yet, but it sure gives you pause. You think they can only lose 3 more.
I'm backing off 13-4. I not by much. I'm not saying that. This is a. It's really hard to come up with the 17-game records in your head now. What is it? 9-8. I'm not saying they're 9-8.
I'm going to take my own advice and not be a prisoner of what happened today. I could totally be completely wrong, but I'm just not going to succumb to that yet.
11-6. 2 games. 11-6. I'm going to go there. Hey, we'll see who's right. We'll see who's wrong. It is a long season. It's just one game. Make sure you follow along PackersNews.com for everything. Wall-to-wall coverage from the opener, going straight into week 2. We're not even pausing. Straight into week 2. Monday Night Football coming up against the Lions. Big bounce back that this Packers team needs. Until then, he's Pete. I'm Ryan. Thank you so much, everyone, for following along, and we will see you back in Green Bay.